Everybody, we're going to call our meeting to order for Tuesday, October 10th, 2023 for the Planning Commission Board of Adjustment. We will begin with roll call.
Ayers.
Here.
Brisbane. Here. Tice.
Here.
Zierden. And Weaver.
Here. And all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge the allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First item is approval or amendment of the agenda. Do we have anyone that would have any amendments or a motion to approve?
I will move to approve the agenda.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second then?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is passed. All right, we're going to next move to approve the minutes for the September 12th, 2023 regular Planning Commission meeting minutes. Do we have a motion to approve?
I will make that motion.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion has passed. And we'll move on to the council liaison report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our council meeting was Monday, October 2nd. It was a full agenda. There were several presentations, one being the Convention and Visitor Bureau, the Brainerd Lakes Chamber of Commerce. The state allows up to 3% for a lodging tax, and the local businesses are in agreement, and they are looking for the Breezy Point City Council to adopt it. They want all businesses in, or they're not going to do it. They stressed this is not a tax on residents. It's strictly lodging, and this would include VRBOs, Airbnbs, any rentals, but it's not directly for the residents. It's only lodging. We also had a presentation from the superintendent of the Pequot Lakes School District, just covering the referendum. There is a city or a school district website specific to the referendum for residents to look at. It was, a good presentation, but it was covered what is on their webpage for what their needs are going forward. As far as new business, the council accepted the vendor RMA to provide an organizational assessment of staffing, just to see where we're at current and future. The interviewing staff and council will start next week. We set October and November council workshops. The October was actually set. It will be the 17th, which is next week. There will be a 1 to 4 p.m. workshop. What we're covering there is WSB will present the Bushman Road preliminary design, and WIDSEF will present the City Hall schematic design. As far as old business, the disc golf course event permit was discussed and tabled. The council is not in agreement. I do not look for that to come back to council for discussion until January, February timeframe due to the fact of budgets and, the current projects we have going. That kind of takes precedence at this point. The proposed ordinance 2023-04, the cannabis use regulations, was approved. It's our ordinance, but it's basically the same as Crow Wing County's, just changing the words to reflect it's for the city. Other than that I think pretty much covers it.
Does anyone have any questions? No. Thank you. And moving on to open forum, if anyone present would like to speak on a matter that's not currently on the agenda, please approach the podium, state your name, address, and feel free to share with us. All right, I don't see anyone approaching, so we're going to close the open forum and move on to new business. The first item is a public hearing for a conditional use permit application C232006 for White Birch Inc. That is on 30898 Ranchette Drive, Breezy Point. Lots 1, 2, 6, and E 7.5 feet of 5 and south 30-foot lot of lots 3 and 5, all in block 1 of White Birch 11. There's a parcel ID, and it's to construct pickleball courts adjacent to the building and a simulated golf within the building. We're going to go ahead and open this public hearing and start with the applicant presentation. If you could approach the podium, state your name and address.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the Planning Commission. My name is David Landecker. I live at 8185 Wren Drive, Breezy Point, Minnesota, and I'm here representing White Birch Inc. As was just read into the record, the purpose of us being here tonight is to ask for the conditional use to reflect the addition of the pickleball and simulated golf. It currently, the restaurant currently as known as Billy's was a neighborhood restaurant, bar and grill, and that will continue, not the name Billy's, but the restaurant, bar and grill portion of it will continue. In addition, inside there will be simulated golf, 4 stations as I understand, and then on the outside of the building attached to the west side is the location of the pickleball courts that'll be, like I say, attached to the building. Other than there's a reconfiguration of the parking lot that is associated with the pickleball courts, taking over part of the parking lot that's there. If you go to the next sheet, I believe you can see that. Next one. We'll get there. Here we go. So as you can see on the drawing that's currently represented on the screen, there's 5 pickleball courts that will be on the westerly side of the building, which will be fenced in, and then the simulated golf will be on the front portion of the restaurant bar, which currently is sort of like a private meeting room area of that facility. So that'll all be converted into simulated golf. Entrance will be into the restaurant will be from the front on County Road 11 side, where currently that entrance hasn't been used very often. That'll become sort of their main entrance into the restaurant and facility at this point. So the parking lot has been shifted over to the easterly, or the portion that's been lost to the pickleball has been shifted over to the easterly, so it's just kind of a nice wraparound throughout the property. The green space, impervious, all stay within the limits that are required by the city. So it's pretty, I guess I don't really have a lot more to add to it. It's sort of making sure we can get the associated uses of that in conjunction with the current building. So I'm here to entertain any questions you might have, you or the public.
I have something. So like where the courts are, pickleball courts, and then there's a parking, is there like gonna be like some kind of a fence or something there?
Yeah, there's around the whole court, and then individually within the courts, there's an 8-foot high fence that goes around the entire perimeter of it. So the only way you can get in to play pickleball is by entering through the restaurant. And then, getting a pass to go in and play, so they can control, the use of the courts if there's tournaments and things like that going on. So they'll control it through the restaurant bar area.
I read that there was golf cart parking. Is that what's at the kind of the top of
Yeah,
that?
yeah, exactly. Up on the top, you can see there's sort of looks like a little comb up there.
Yep.
There's 10 golf cart designated locations. There's actually a few there now, but they'll be striped in and painted for that. And most of the parking within the perimeter are 10 by 18 foot stalls, which would still allow for golf, a couple golf carts per location. But yes, there's actually some specifically designated for golf carts.
Madam Chair. David, if I remember correctly, the east side right now is not paved, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and it will be,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, sort of, I'm not sure, I can't point at that, but if you were to take the easterly edge of the building and draw it like almost straight down to the County Road 11, it's paved. I mean, there's parking designated there now, but as you wrap around, there's no parking on the sort of the very easterly perimeter where I've got it circling through. That's all grass and vegetative right now. So it'll need to be graded and then eventually paved.
And with that paving, we're still okay with impervious surface?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, we're under the 50. It's actually about 46%. And what's a little bit unique about this particular piece of property, and you don't see it, and you don't even see it when you go to the site, the stormwater pond, there's actually a stormwater infiltration pond to the north, which was designed, and so the whole parking lot, the whole entire property is collected through pipe, and then it's piped back to a pond back there that was dug. And it's dry, I mean, it's sand, so it's kind of like out at the clinic where
Right.
it's there, but you never see any water in it. And you can't see it from the road because there's actually a hill between that and where that depression is. But that's where all the water goes, so was sized adequately enough to handle the additional parking that we're providing.
Is that all owned?
Yeah,
as the
that's all
same?
the parcel identification number and in the description.
So the outside eating won't change or any of,
I'm not really sure what they plan on
That-
doing there.
that probably doesn't affect anything.
Yeah,
And it sounds like the seating, because of the golf simulators, will reduce by maybe 50 potential people, so sewer is not an issue, is what I'm reading, so.
correct, yeah, it's actually going to, theoretically, the number of seating within that facility is going to be reduced significantly from what it was originally planned for, almost in half. The state health department right now has a sign when you walk in for the bar and restaurant, portion of it that seats only 73. So, and that doesn't include what's up in the front, that's just that open area, and that's what we're retaining at this point, so.
Does anyone have further questions at this point? All right, we may call you back up.
All
Thank
right,
you.
thank you.
And moving on to staff reviews. Jerry, if you could lead us through that.
Again, the conditional use application is 2023-006. The applicant is White Birch Inc. Originally, when we got the application, it was a dual application between White Birch and Red Tail Investments, which were the present owners. That is since finalized and the sale is finalized, so the applicant today is White Birch Inc., and you can disregard the Red Tail. The property address is 30898 Ranchette Drive. PID is 101-70646, and the legal descriptions is lot 126, and the east 7.5 of lot 5, and the south 40 feet of lots 3, and block 5 in block 1, White Birch 11. The zoning is commercial. The applicable codes is 153.040, 153.044, 0.045, 0.062, and 0.119. The request The conditional use request is develop and construct a recreational public facility, pickleball and golf simulation. The applicant proposed to develop 5 outdoor pickleball courts and indoor golf simulator on commercial property currently operated as Billy's Bar and Restaurant. The property is located at 30898 Ranchette Drive, the southeast intersection of County Road 11 and Ranchette Drive. Property is approximately 3.42 acres and hosts a bar and restaurant, patio, coolers, parking stalls. Conditional use permit was issued to construct the bar and restaurant in 2007. Upon review of the conditional use application, the commission needs to consider the findings as required in section 153.119. In review, the commission should state whether or not the finding is acceptable towards granting the CUP if applicable. The following findings must be met. The use or development is appropriate conditional use in a land use zone. The property is zoned commercial and the request is appropriate under 153.044 and 153.040. The use or development with conditions conforms to the comprehensive land use plan. The use with conditions is compatible with the existing neighborhood, and the use with conditions will not be injurious to the public health, safety, welfare, decency, order, comfort, convenience, appearance, or prosperity of the city. The following must be considered. The conditional use should not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of the other properties in the immediate vicinity for the purpose permitted on the property, nor substantially diminish or improve property values in the immediate vicinity. The conditional use will not impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of surrounding vacant property for uses predominant in the area. The conditional use will not create excessive additional requirements at public cost for public facilities and services. The use does not require any additional public infrastructure. Conditional use will have vehicle approaches on the property which are so designed as to not create traffic congestion. The proposed use is in keeping with the commercial character of the neighborhood, creating nominal additional traffic flow. Adequate measures have been taken to provide sufficient off-street parking. The use is in keeping with the commercial character of the neighborhood, again. Adequate measures have been taken or will be taken to prevent, control offensive odors, fumes, dust, noise, and vibrations. So none of these will constitute a nuisance. Proposed use is in keeping with the commercial character of the neighborhood. The conditional use will not result in the destruction, loss, or damage of natural, scenic, or historic features. Conditional use will promote the prevention and control of pollution of the ground surface waters, including sedimentation and control of nutrients. Applicant has filed the appropriate application for the CUP. The applicant has paid the appropriate fee. Public notice of the public hearing was published in the legal newspaper, and all property owners with 350 were given mailed notice of said hearing. The public hearing was being held as we speak. Staff has reviewed the following: the site plan, CUP application, building code compliance. Recreational facilities, public is an appropriate conditional use in the commercial zone. Pickleball and golf simulation is a public recreation facility. The following may be appropriate conditions for approval of a CUP. The applicant shall obtain a building permit for the structure. Applicant shall comply with all setback requirements. All structures shall comply with state building code. Impervious coverage of the total site shall not exceed 50%. All lighting to focus on the property. Entry to parking lot shall utilize existing entrances. Fencing shall not exceed, and I believe the applicant has stated 8 feet. And if you approve a conditional use for this use, it would be appropriate to include a height limitation on that fence. Anything over 72 inches requires a conditional use permit for the height.
Separate conditional use?
Pardon?
Would it be a separate conditional use permit?
No.
Okay.
Does anyone have questions for Jerry at this point? All right. We're going to move on to public input. So if anyone in the audience would like to share with us, please approach the podium at this point. State your name, address, and feel free to share your input. All right, I don't see any movement, so we're going to close the public input portion and move on to, and close the public hearing and move on to our official action here. All right, any discussion, questions among the the commission?
I have a question for the applicant. Is there gonna be additional added lighting for the courts?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know locations or height of the poles I'm assuming they're gonna be on?
I don't know the height,
Okay.
but I can give you a, I can't remember, can you put something on the screen here?
Yeah.
How do I do that?
Magic.
Huh? Magic?
Yep, just set it on there. There you go.
So, if you see this drawing, I just handed it to Jerry, but there's some existing poles that are out there already. They're dark, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4 of them that surround the property. And then, pickleball court has 3 light standards that'll go inside that. I don't know what the heights are. I mean, they'll be probably similar to what the standards are out on the other lights, I would assume. So when you go out there, there's a standard here. There's one down by the intersection of County Road 11. There's one over on the east side by the County Road 11. And then there's one on the back side of the building that's sort of kind of like an old traditional a security light, night security light. So that's the lighting plan.
Are there hours of operation for pickleball that are intended, that you're aware of?
I asked that question of the owners, and they, did not have any specific hours other than, I mean, the facility itself, the bar restaurant has hours of operation. And so I doubt that the pickleball will be operating during all of those time periods, but there was nothing specific.
So you could have pickleball at midnight?
Right.
You could. I would guess that there's probably people that do pickleball at midnight. If there's lights and enough guests playing. I won't be doing it at midnight.
Neither will I.
Any other questions?
Thank you. Did you have any concerns about the lighting? Anything specific?
No, just that obviously it's in here just to have it directed to that, which then brought me to, if they're gonna have lights, how late are they gonna play? Do we wanna add a ending time for pickleball, noise? I understand it is commercial, and commercial surrounds it, so is that really an issue or not?
I was thinking about that, and they have outdoor seating too, which you think about a commercial property, it's not in a residential area, so it wouldn't necessarily be impacting.
Right.
I know, I just remember back in Brainerd when they had the baseball field, and that was an issue because the lighting was close to residential, and
Right.
they did have to establish hours, but I don't know with this not being near anything residential, does anyone feel strongly that we would want to address that in this?
The ball being hit does get a little annoying, if there isn't really any houses. There is a house across the road, but you said they have silencers?
Yeah, so I've heard and read when pickleball became very big during COVID, because other communities that were adding it in other states inside residential neighborhoods had problems hearing the banging all day.
How does everyone feel about the fencing? Is, allowable is 6 foot. Do we think 6 foot would be sufficient? Or because this is pickleball and that there has some potential for balls to fly higher than maybe a 6 foot fence? So
Into the parking lot.
I'd be concerned about vehicles too, I suppose, and have a higher than normal fencing.
I don't even know what a tennis court would be, their height.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I thought 8 foot was sufficient, but I would try to make it maybe an ornamental fence, just for aesthetic reasons. Or do we, maybe it doesn't have to be ornamental, maybe it's vinyl, we can, I guess, choose whatever we see fit, but I would not like to see a chain link fence, preferably.
Some kind of like a shroud over it, like a,
Ornate,
Yeah.
something.
David, is there any comment on that? Is there any plan on what type of fencing is currently in the?
Well, there is, what I heard it called, instead of a fence, I heard it called screening, which is sort of, it's fencing, but it's sort of like, not camouflage, but the darker shaded looking materials. So I don't know what color this is, but it is going to be, what I've heard is screening used and not fencing.
Okay.
But I think you need to use, if you're gonna use it, use both, because I don't really know what all the materials are. There's fences, there's the exterior fence, and then there's the interior ones as well, so.
Right.
But if that's something that needs to be specifically in the conditional use, I'm fearful of if you use some term that you make up yourself, that could be counterproductive. And then I would just ask you if you would table this while you heard some of your other people, and I could make some phone calls to try to figure it out. We can talk about it later if it's important.
see what the options are.
If you want me to explore it more. Otherwise, if you just went with the 8 feet screening fence, that would be, I think, sufficient for me.
Other than just the plain, like you said, chain link, yes.
We could specify if that was important to not have a chain link. Get it
Right, there might be chain link
You might
and,
need the chain link in order to hang.
to hang it.
right,
Good point.
which, as long as the chain link is on the inside, just like a fence on a property line, you can't have your posts against your neighbor's lot, they gotta be on the inside. I was just,
I don't know what they use now in these courts. Do they use, like panels, like baseball, where they hang these things down, just basically,
right,
so the ball ain't going where it shouldn't be, or,
I'm not privy to. In my mind, I'm seeing a commercial construction site that has fence, and then there's screening attached to that fence on the outside.
yeah,
That's what I'm envisioning.
kind of a blanketing over it to make it look,
Which that's fine.
Because I think Cross Lakes pickleball courts are just chain link, if I recall.
Chain link and open.
So does anyone feel strongly that we would need to have an answer for that before we would approve the fencing/screening?
Can we say what it's not gonna be? Not a snow fence, not,
Jerry, do you have any recommendations?
Well, I think you can try to get too specific.
right?
I think you can, you could require some kind of screening or hangings or whatever, and that's good for the first 3 months of the windy season, and then after that, it gets ripped up and does it get repaired? And it probably looks worse than just having a fence that serves the purpose of protecting the balls from going all over the place. I think you may be getting too far into it.
Because of this being such a public commercial place, I tend to feel like they're going to do the right thing,
So visible.
that I don't know that we need to regulate it as much as if it was something not already established. Does anyone feel compelled to make a motion? Or would it help if we kind of went through a few, why don't we do that, just to kind of do an overview of what conditions must be met. If we look at A through D of findings that must be met for a conditional use permit, it must be appropriate for the land use. I think we are in agreement that that would be the case. The use or development condition conforms with the comprehensive land use plan, which I have here. I've reviewed it. I think it does fit in with our commercial development for recreational facilities, which is listed as an option. The use and conditions are compatible with the existing neighborhood. I do think it's a commercial neighborhood. It's already existing. They're just adding to it. And D, the use and conditions would not be injurious to public health, safety, welfare, and so forth of the city. I think the potential of balls flying by having the fencing would eliminate public health concerns or safety concerns to the best degree possible. Is anyone not in agreement that these findings have been met for a conditional use permit?
They're-
I think that, the hours of operation, I think there's a house across the street, that mini golf, I don't know, what do they put, like 10 o'clock on it or something like that? I think we might look at something like that.
I know that they wanted, I know that some of the discussion has been 11 o'clock, just because it's it's a full-time, it's a different kind of establishment at that. I mean, it's out on its own in that commercial district, and there's the operation behind it is the bar and the restaurant. So I know that they were, but all of these things have a associated issue, and that's finding people to help employment, employees to operate it. But I personally, for what I know right now, I would say the hours should, it doesn't really impact the neighborhood. Property to the north is commercial. White Birch owns the property to the west, which is the hockey arena. The property to the east, which is residential, is actually screened from that pickleball court because our building is in the way of it before it even gets there, and then there's about 100 feet of woods between our parking and that. So it seemed like if the bar and restaurant operation is operating, that would be no reason the pickleball couldn't operate at the same time. I'm not sure that would be the case, but I don't know why you would regulate it different than the other establishments that are in there being used.
So you're saying that they could play pickleball till 1 in the morning then?
Well, they could do simulated golf till 1 in the morning too.
It's in the building.
Right. But I mean, again, this is a seasonal use.
Right.
So, 9 months out of the year it's probably not being, or 8 months out of the year it's probably not being used. It'd only be during the season, the little season we have here for that. So it's not a continuous use. We're not using it all the time.
I mean, do people really play that late? 11 o'clock, I mean.
Depends who goes in there and has a few drinks.
Yeah, exactly.
My question would be, who does it impact? I just keep thinking the area, I mean, there's the road that goes in between that and the next closest property.
It's across 11 and Ranchette.
Right. And I don't know that the noise
There's
would,
highway noise
yeah, there's highway noise, there's other things that would also be in play.
That's true.
and drowned it
Personally,
out.
I'm thinking pickleball is probably not going to be too noisy
Yeah.
for that distance.
And if they do the screen, it'll cut the noise down a little bit.
Well, I would entertain a motion to approve the conditional use permit for pickleball and golf simulation. The conditions for approval would be, one, that the applicant obtain a building permit for the structure. Two, applicant complies with all setback requirements. Three, all structures comply with state building code. Four, impervious coverage would not exceed 50%. All lighting is to focus on the property. The entry to the parking lot shall utilize the existing entrances. Fencing shall not exceed 8 feet and may include appropriate screening.
There you go.
So we have a motion. Do we have any seconds?
I'll second it.
We have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried.
Thank you.
All right, and moving on to the next item, which is a public hearing for conditional use permit application C23007, Patricia K. Lane Revocable Trust, located at 9069 Apple Lane in Breezy Point, Lot 3, Block 1, Copperwood First Edition, parcel 10150537, to construct an accessory structure that is 15 to 20 feet in height. This is a zone R2. We're going to go ahead and open the public hearing, and I invite the applicant to the podium. Please state your name and address.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. My name is Chuck Lane, and I'm trying to, or want to proceed with a detached storage, second structure. I don't know what else, I mean, there's really no homes around, you know, the structure. There is a private drive, I know behind the structure, Weavers Point Road, which there's no houses close to the proposed structure. It's in a wooded area. I look at it as though, you know, I feel like I've got different things I like to put in that structure. The other option is if I didn't build the structure, those items would be in viewing of maybe folks that are on Weavers Point Road. I could park trailers up there, I could park tractors, I could park bicycles or whatever. The purpose of the structure is to be organized and to be able to store items that need to be stored.
One of the questions that I have is, in this particular zone in R2, you need to, it is a requirement to have a principal structure before having a accessory structure. Is there a principal structure that is being built on there? Can you comment onto that?
Yes, currently I do have a building permit. I'm building a house at 9069 Apple Lane. That is under construction, and that house is would obviously be built ahead of the secondary structure.
Okay. And to confirm, because it looks like it may have been crossed off originally, what is the height and size of the structure?
16 foot, and then I've got a 12-4 roof pitch. Jerry, could you help me on this one? Because I don't have a blown-up plan to,
Well, I
my
think-
print's really small.
It looks like it's 19.6 to the midpoint of the roof. To the midpoint?
To the peak,
Midpoint to the roof,
so halfway between 23 and 16.
yeah.
That's what the ordinance is?
Our ordinance is to the midpoint of the roof.
I've got it. It says or ridge on there, doesn't it?
No, it says midpoint.
Yeah, it's midpoint.
Midpoint of peak, highest point of eaves, hip or natural. We actually have a definition of building height in the ordinance.
Looks like it's 1911. Looks like it says 1911.
Yeah. So small.
Can you put that on there? Put this on.
I was just reading accessory structure height,
Oh, yeah, but that was,
which says.
we called building height out in the definitions.
Okay.
Madam Chair, just to be clear, so given this definition, Jerry, the height is what?
I believe it's 19.6.
19.6, okay. And I assume that's the reason why this is a conditional use permit.
The reason it's a conditional use is because the height above 15 feet, 15 to 20 feet requires a conditional use permit.
So then, one of the questions that we would have naturally, if there is a conditional use or variance being requested, would be just kind of reasoning for why it's being constructed higher than what is normally in the zoning. Is there a particular use that you're looking for, or a reason for having a little bit extra height there?
Well, I do have a boat that is a Boston whaler. It's tall to get into the garage for storage, and I have a variety of items I would like to store that I would utilize that space for.
How tall of a sidewall would that be, Jerry? You know,
Pardon?
how tall of a sidewall would that be?
I believe it's 16
Okay.
is what is being proposed.
So Jerry, if you lowered it, would it have to be lowered quite a bit, wouldn't it, to not have a conditional, well, it has to be a conditional use because it's an accessory
Well,
building.
the height for an accessory structure, you can put it up to 15 feet without a conditional use. Anything above 15 to 20 requires a conditional use permit.
Right. So why are you pushing it so far back?
On the property,
Right.
because of the space for turnaround, to get a boat up in that area. There is a hill as well off that drive. It's, I don't know how steep, it probably at least 15 to 20 feet. I did go as far back, from the property line that I could, and yet be able to get my boat and other items in there it's just tight. It was very, I actually had originally had this over a little bit, had to move it because there's just no way to do any type of, to get a trailer up there.
Could rotate it 100 or 90 degrees and have a door come straight out.
That was the original plan,
Oh,
and just did not leave, unless I tear down some big oaks, which I really do not want to do. I've got some really big oaks up there that I'd like to save, and I would have to cut those down for sure. I tried to place it and it, with the, I guess, trying to keep as many trees as I could realistically for the space I had.
One question I do have too, just part of the zoning is a requirement that the accessory structure is not higher than the principal structure. Since we don't have the principal structure in place, would that be a true statement, that the principal structure would not be lower than the garage
It will not.
height? Okay.
And you can, I mean, really, that goes up onto that hill. And when the structure's built, I don't see how visibly you could see that off of our private road going into that smaller development. Now, from Weaver's Point, obviously, there's a road on the backside that angles down. And there would be visibility from the road, but once again, there's no houses close by on Weaver's Point Road. You know,
It's so big, it looks just about like an airplane hangar. Tall and height, I mean.
Does anyone have any more questions at this point? We may call you back up if we need to. Thank
okay,
you.
thank you. Do you want this still up here, or should I give this to Jerry?
Might as well give it to Jerry. Thank
Okay.
you. Okay, moving on to staff review. Jerry, would you be kind to lead us through that?
Again, it's conditional use permit application 2023-007. The applicant is Patricia K. Lane, a revocable trust. Property address is 9069 Apple Lane. The PID number is 101-50537. The legal description is Lot 3, Block 1, Copper Root, First Edition to Breezy Point. The zoning is R2. Applicable code is 153032. Conditional use request is construct a detached accessory structure. When this report was done, we did not have we had a different dimension than what is shown on your, on the site plan. The dimension today is 40 by 44 and the height is 19.6 feet. The property is Lot 3, Block 1, Copper Root, First Edition. It's a 2.04 acre lot located in Copper Root, First Edition, the northwest shore of Pelican Lake in Nelson Bay. The lot is served by municipal sewer, and access to the lot is adjacent lots, and the adjacent lots is from Apple Lane. It's a private easement. The zoning is R2. Applicant has applied for a building permit to construct dwelling south of Apple Lane and is proposing a detached accessory structure north of Apple Lane, access to both structures from Apple Lane. Now, it's been brought to my attention that the 2.04 acres that we used as a reference for the lot that was in the GIS system of the county is different. We have a discrepancy. We've got actually three different square footages of the lot. One is based on the site plan that the applicant gave us, and one is based on the actual plat from the plat that we have in the office. Right now, it seems that discrepancy could throw this whole thing into a different discussion about the size. If it's under what we used in this application is 2.04 acres. If that is less than if it's less than 2 acres, that site is less than 2 acres, which some of the other numbers are, that would make this structure too big for the property. My suggestion at this time is that we get a certification from a professional land surveyor is exactly what that square footage of that acreage is on that lot, and utilize that in any further discussions. I really suggest that maybe it's senseless to have the discussion if we got the discrepancy. And I apologize for the fact that the discrepancy just come in front of you right now. Apologize to the applicant. It was just, the question was just thrown to me this afternoon or this evening. And again, I think in all fairness, I think we need to have some accurate number before we can even go any further in this discussion.
What does the county,
Pardon?
what does the county have that should all be, what does the county say it is?
The county's GIS system says it's 88,879 square feet. The plan that was submitted here shows that it's 80,503 square feet. I have a plat that, again, I just scurried around to find this evening, that shows it's 81,853. Again, the one number is over 2 acres that allows a bigger building than what something under 2 acres allows. We used, when this report was done, we used the county GIS. We did not use the other 3 numbers. Again, I apologize for the fact that there's a discrepancy, but I think that needs to be cleared up.
So would the commission, before we proceed and spend any more time, should we just go ahead and request that we have that additional information before we?
I think
Does anyone
we should.
disagree?
Input? Did we skip public input?
Madam Chair, I would recommend that because we noticed the public hearing for tonight and there are people here obviously like to speak to this matter, to whether or not you choose to hold discussion tonight, to still conduct the public hearing.
Sounds good. Does anyone have more questions for Jerry before we allow public input? No. All right, so we will go ahead and move from staff review at this time to public input. So anyone in the audience, feel free to come to the podium, state your name and address, and share with us your input.
I will do that, I'm slow. My name is Joanne Weaver, and I reside at 9914 Weavers Point Road. My husband Arthur and I were notified of this request for a variance in that we own property on Douglas Way, which is within the 350 feet of the applicant's proposal. Not because we live on Weavers Point, but because of the property that we have that is undeveloped. To start my presentation, I will just say we are opposed to this request for a variance. And if I may, I'd like to sort of walk through the applicant's application. I will make this brief. Question number 2 says, describe the impact of the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity. If there is no impact, explain why. That comes from what you all have in front of you. And the applicant's answer was there are no houses around the property and no houses built around property where structure is being proposed. This is wooded area and private. I'm not, Weavers Point Road, a portion of it, once you pass the golf course, is private. I don't know if you've gone out to look at what is being proposed here with this variance and driven on Weavers Point Road. It is not wooded, and I would actually want to have the trees that need to be, quote, saved identified, because there are very few trees left up there. It's cleared, it's staked, it's had soil hauled in. It's ready for construction as though everything's been approved. I also would like to say, full disclosure here, long ago that was property that my husband's parents owned, and it got sold a few times. Someone came forward and they wanted a PUD there with 17 units. At that time, I sat on P&Z. We listened to all the arguments. One of the major things was the wetlands. And there are still delineated wetlands on this, in the Copper Root Edition, which I know you all know. I think there, and help me, Jerry, are there 5 or 6 platted lots?
I believe there's 5.
5, okay. Some of the lots are more impacted than others. And I think it's feasible, and does everyone have a building permit at this point?
Pardon?
Do all 5 property owners have a building permit at this point?
This piece of property has a building permit for a house. The first lot adjacent to North Lakeview has a house that's been built along with an accessory structure. And I do not believe there are building permits for the other 3.
Which then would cause me, if you look at the plat, not just what's up here on the screen now, but the entire Copper Root Edition, if this structure is built as proposed, what happens to the ability of the other property owners to locate their dwelling, if indeed they choose to put one up? Because they would be impacted by the size of this if it goes forward as proposed, and they might not, there are wetlands in some of those. I mean, they can't build that close to the lake, so they might have to pull back. And they would be impacted by this structure if indeed it's as big as it's proposed. Back to, when there was a PUD, I mean, we listened to the arguments about wetlands, and I'm probably overly sensitive to wetlands because I'm on Soil and Water, Crow Wing County District 4 Supervisor. I listen carefully when the discussion on wetlands and wildlife and all that comes up, because we do need to preserve some of our natural resources. I'm going to jump back into the application. Question number 3, describe the character of the area and the existing patterns and use of development in the area. How is the proposal consistent with these patterns and uses? The applicant's answer was neighbor with a secondary structure, and that would be the person who lives first one going in. That is a private road, and I have not gone down the road, but I, in years past, have walked that property many, many times. The neighbor that's built the house and the accessory structure, thank goodness, has followed in line, or at least in the spirit of the Breezy Point Comp Plan. And if you look at page 41 on the comp plan, building facades should consist of wood and stone. And I believe that that person has matched wood on both the house and on the accessory building, which would be nice if we kind of keep that going forward, because that's what's in the comp plan. Question number 5, describe the impact on the character of the neighborhood in which the property is located. No impact, as the proposed structure is in a wooded private area. That was the answer. And again, I would emphasize, it's no longer wooded, and it's not really very private. It's literally feet from Weavers Point Road. And, neighborhoods don't start and stop with property lines. It's a bigger, you all know that. You all live in a neighborhood, I would assume. And it isn't just where you live, it's the people who live around you. Question number 6, describe the impact of the traffic on roads and highways in the vicinity and the expected traffic produced by the proposed use. Is there adequate parking available to accommodate the proposal? The answer, structure is on a private road and will have no impact. There's a second sentence, and unfortunately I couldn't decipher the writing. There will be an impact because the north lot line of the applicant's property is literally within a few feet of the privately owned portion of Weavers Point Road. All ingress and egress relative to the property owners on the private portion of Weavers Point Road and Pelican Trail parallels within 10 to 15 feet of the rear aspect of the property referenced in this application. For years, this is the only way people on Weavers Point and Pelican Trail can get in and out. There is no other way in or out. And many of these individuals, property owners, have been there for a long, long time. And then I'm the person that made Jerry scratch his head here a few minutes before the meeting, because he knows I'm very anal retentive about some things. I looked at the schematic that was included in your packet. I saw the numbers off to the side. I did some math, and I agree. I mean, the 2.04 acres That's exactly what's on the county mapping thing. I looked myself. So his numbers matched that, but when you look at the numbers up there, off to the side, you can multiply that square footage, and it's not 2 acres. It falls about over 6,000 square feet short. So, you know, what is the real amount of land there? I don't know, and Jerry's already suggested a way to address that. And one question I have is when they, you know, the county puts 2.04 acres up there, do they include the dedicated land for a roadway like Apple Lane and a sewer line?
There's a sewer line in Apple Lane. That Apple Lane was an easement that was created to service all of that subdivision. The stipulation at the time was that there was going to be no access to Weaver's Point Road. And that's why Apple Lane was constructed as it was.
I understand that. If, let's just take this plot of land or plat, the dedicated roadway that crosses this individual's land, is that included in the 2.04? Because it's not usable anymore.
It is only an easement, and I'm assuming it is.
Okay, just clarifying. Okay. In closing, the requested height variance is not compatible with the existing neighborhood, as the construction of a tall accessory building at the rear aspect of the property will ultimately be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity. In addition, it will have the effect of ingress and egress areas to Weaver's Point and Pelican Trail appearing commercial rather than residential. This could potentially diminish or impair the property values of all those parcels located on Weaver's Point Road and Pelican Trail. It is expected that, and you've already touched on some of these things, as per the ordinance, the main dwelling will be constructed before an accessory building, and that when and if an accessory building of appropriate size, height, and use of building material is constructed, it will be in keeping with the residential character of the neighborhood. Do you guys have any questions for me? Yes.
Question. So, up there, where he wants to build, there is no wetland up there that I'm
No
aware of,
wetland
right?
there.
Okay, so that's down by the lake where he's gonna build his home.
And
Right.
his property, I think, is really on the edge. I don't know if that dedicated wetland is, I know it's further down on those two properties, but whether it actually impacts his or not, I don't know. And, you know, again, from past history, that is the topography there is very interesting. A lot of hills, some challenges, but, you know, that could make for a very interesting building site too. Thank you for asking the question.
Can I answer that? The house is built, and I believe it's more than the 30 feet away from the dedicated wetland.
Is there a wetland
between
on
the
this?
lake and the house.
Okay.
He has conformed to all those wetland setbacks, and he's done his due diligence.
That has created challenges for the people who want to build there. I mean, you know.
And us as also.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And I think every owner there that's aware of that, what they bought and, you know. So,
Okay, thank you. Any other questions before I take my seat? No, thank you.
Madam Chair and committee members, I'm Jeff Smith, and I live at 9866 Weavers Point Road. I own the road, so it's an easement across our property, my wife and I. And we have about 50 acres of property, including Weavers Point Road and the historic log home that is at the end of that road. We are celebrating our 100th year as the Weaver Point neighborhood next year. So it was started in 1924 when our house was built. And everyone that enters this historic area and goes to their lake home, part of that value is going through those gates that we just constructed. Some of you have probably seen that. And going down the wood-lined long driveway that is missing in a lot of areas around Pelican Lake now because of the development that's taken place. I'm a developer, I'm retired and a commercial contractor, so I'm usually on the other side of this conversation. So I get both perspectives here. I'm opposed to this CUP primarily because this particular topography of this site is one of the higher points on all of those 5 lots. And I appreciate Mr. Lane's concern with being able to turn around because any of us that have moved boats and tried to put equipment in a facility or an accessory structure like that, you need clearance to do that. Otherwise, it's just not useful. So I understand that. The fact, though, that it's a 40 by 44 foot, presumably metal building with a 23-foot high peak that has been cleared and leveled and pad prepared is very visible from that road. So it will absolutely change the character coming into this neighborhood. There are approximately 20 neighbors who live through those gates, and I contacted them just to get a flavor for what people felt. And of course, we'd prefer there not be any building there, but that's not our purview. So they are all in opposition to this CUP. I can't speak for them, obviously, but they're very concerned about creating an industrial-looking airport hangar right next to our private drive that comes into all of our properties. I won't repeat what Joanne eloquently stated earlier. I think the intent of the over 2 acres and under 2 acres should really be considered when you do get accuracy here. I'm not looking to rewrite the ordinance, but when you're considering a CUP, I would just take that into consideration that this, even if it is 2.04 acres, this is very visible. It's pushed to the very back of the lot, the very highest point, and it's a bit gray as I read the ordinance saying that an accessory structure should not be higher than the primary structure. This is, I think, 20 or 30 feet higher than the primary structure will be, because, as Mr. Lane stated, it's probably a 20-foot drop down to the housing site compared to the pad for the accessory structure. I won't be repetitive, as I said. I know that Mr. Lane is allowed to put an accessory structure on this lot. I'm happy to support the proper placement and the proper size for that. I just would be, I don't see any compelling reason to grant a conditional use permit that is not in keeping with the character of the neighborhood and diminishes the enjoyment and value of our properties through that road. So thank you for hearing me out. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Kent Hodder. My family has had property and cabins for over 60 years off of Pelican Trail. And we too do not abut any of this, but we drive through it. And I too wish it wasn't happening. If you've driven by it, it's stark. Hopefully once the clearing of the land grows back a little bit, it won't be quite as in your face. But I feel like the sensibility of the ordinance is there for this very reason, which is there are people who don't want to build and there are people who do. And for the ones, everybody came together and decided on a compromise and set an ordinance. And it just seems that in this kind of controversial tug of war, there's no reason to make an exception for that. I spend half my year down in the city, and what we would call is happening to that road an alley. You drive down the main road and it's where people have their trees, the front of their house. It's to be welcoming. There's a tone set. You drive down an alley and you're looking at the butt end of garages. And I think if you drive by there, you'll have to agree, this very much makes an otherwise what had been very wooded and kind of wonderful entrance to the property feel very much like an alley. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom Lalahai, I live at 7460 Fairway Lane. As being part of the city when this whole thing got approved, there was some issues that we discussed. And kind of an ancillary point, I had the same issue with regard to how big is the lot when I built my house on Lakeshore Drive. You have the plot map, which actually lays out the stake corners of the lot, and that can be less than the actual lot itself if you have wetland or meandering shoreline is what it's referred to. And when you come to actually getting the size of the lot, you do include meandering shoreline next to the water that is actually an extension of the lot itself. That was part of the calculation that goes into impervious coverage and everything else. So if the plot map says it's less than 2 acres, but the actual survey, which actually takes it all the way down to the water's edge, okay, that may actually be greater than 2. And that's what I found when I built my house on Lakeshore. As far as, is he meeting all the requirements? You can see the building envelope. He's within the building envelope. That basically says he's meeting all the requirements for setbacks. Like I don't really have any skin in the game. I'm just trying to give you a little bit more of insight as to what's going on. As far as the siding and stuff like that, that is actually something that you should be considering. It should be similar siding to what's on the house, and that is one of our ordinance requirements. To have a steel-sided pole barn up there, that is not correct. So that would be one of the conditions. But as far as the lot size, I think you're going to find that he's got over 2 acres, because the meandering shoreline actually was going to add that extra square footage. And that's what the county goes by as well. They go by the actual size of the lot, not necessarily the plot area. So, do you have any questions?
So if you look on this description here, it's not steel siding, it's LP smart side on here. So
What's the house going to be built with?
LP smart siding, same thing as secondary.
Yeah, we're talking about this shed right now, but according to this, it shows LP smart side.
The smart siding is for the accessory building?
Yes,
And
that's
the
what
house
I'm
is gonna be-
seeing.
The house is going to be the
I
same?
don't know about the house.
Yes, it is. The house is the same siding.
Okay.
It's going
Okay.
on the secondary structure, so it's not a metal pole barn.
Okay, that being the case, then that requirement is met. So
And I think,
the rest is up to you.
I think there's 6 lots there. At one time, there was 5. And I think that's why all that got changed.
Yeah, I know it.
There was a chunk up on top, and then they were gonna sell that separately, and then all those down at the bottom there. So now there's 6.
No, I think there's 5.
I
There
think there's
used
6.
to be 6, and then I think that 6th one was by itself, and they split that and extended the other lots out.
No, there's 6, because I know every 6 of them that own the land there, so I just gonna clarify that right now.
Jerry's going to check.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay.
it was 5, then it went to 6, or it was 6?
It was
then went to
5, and then they went to 6.
Yeah. Was it?
Yeah.
Okay, yep.
Whether that has any bearing, it doesn't really, but.
Madam Chair, obviously Jerry's going to check, but I think our replanting of that reduced it from 6 to 5.
It could be. I'm not sure if that's.
Where's that other one?
How that impacts this.
Right, but yeah, there's 6 there.
Okay.
Anyone else in the audience that would like to approach the podium?
Madam Mayor, if there's no one else who likes to speak, I do have a number of letters to read that were to be written in. First, I do have a letter from Mr. Hodder. Mr. Hodder, would you like me to read that in, or do you? Okay, I'll just acknowledge that we have a letter from Mr. Hodder, and it will go into the public record. And then the next letter I have a number of people who sent different signed versions of this letter, but it's the same verbiage, so let's read it once, and then I'll now acknowledge all of those who sent the letter. As it says, dear Mr. Chansky, I'm one of the residents in the historic Weavers Point, Pelican Trail neighborhood in Breezy Point, and I'm writing to express my opposition to the conditional use permit application listed as conditional use permit application C-23007, Patricia K. Lane Revocable Trust, 9069 Apple Lane, Breezy Point, Lot 3, Block 1, Copperwood First Edition, Parcel 101500537. Construct accessory structure 15 to 20 feet in height, Zone R2. Our neighborhood is accessed through Weavers Point Road and is celebrating our 100th anniversary next year. The Weavers Point Road entrance is very iconic with a single-laned, tree-lined drive. This entrance drive to our property is one of the reasons our neighborhood is so quaint and highly sought after. The request to erect a 40-foot by 44-foot storage building with a 23 roof height along our entrance drive is totally incompatible with the surroundings and will undoubtedly have injurious effects on our property value and overall appearance of the neighborhood. I'm in total opposition of this conditional use and ask that the Planning Commission Board of Adjustment turn down the request and ensure that the applicants meet all of the criteria of the zoning ordinance for construction in the R2 designation. And those that sent this letter are Heidi Howard at 30769 Weavers Point Road, Mr. Jeff Smith at 9866 Weavers Point Road, Ron and Nancy Flesher at 9858 Weavers Point Road, Melissa and Alan Spalding at 9917 Pelican Trail, Ken Heen at 9881 Weavers Point Road, John and Tammy Ross at 30777 Weavers Point Road, Donald and Sharon Rask at 9963 Pelican Trail, David and Tracy Kaluzniak at 9849 Weavers Point Road, Joyce Poppy at 1120 South 2nd Street, Minneapolis, Mac Graham and Jill Poppy Graham at 4947 Green Valley Road, Minnetonka, Minnesota, Philip M. Howard at 30769 Weavers Point Road, and then Steve and Suzanne Everly at 10003 Pelican Trail.
Thank you. Any other input?
Do I get to speak again?
You can certainly approach the podium, state your name and address.
Chuck Lane. The concerned folks, I appreciate your concern. Obviously, there's a lot of history with Weavers Point. I respect that. You know, there are some things that necessarily aren't or weren't represented correctly. First of all, Ms. Weaver explained to you that I'm building a metal pole barn, and I'm not. I am building a structure that is going to match my house. Another gentleman said that it's become an alleyway because of the garage built down by the road. That's specifically why I'm building up on top of the hill, not down by the road. So you don't see my structure. Now I could. As far as other structures, the impact on other structures, I'm not 100% sure, but Carrie's here, and her and Dino own the lot next to me. I don't know if they have enough room to build a structure back there. They might. The road angles. The other two structures have to build their secondary structure obviously close to their house on the lot because of the way the road runs. I do have a picture, in fact, I'd like to show you the trees on Weaver Point Road because I think it was represented that there were no trees. And I happened to go by there today, take a couple pictures of where my lot is. And if you could put this up, please. So this is Weavers Point Road. As you can see, there's no structures. And as you can see, my lot's to the right, there's plenty of trees. So I do have trees on my property. Did I clear my property? Yes, I have every right to clear my property. Did I put a pad down? You bet, I did. I put a pad down hoping that I could start construction when I've got this CUP passed, shortly behind my house. My house is, like I mentioned, going to be the first structure built. as far as impact to Weavers Point Road, I almost felt as though you folks represented that you actually drive through and cars will be driving in to my property and they're not. That's a private road, Weavers Point Road. The only people that are gonna go up to that storage building are myself, my family, okay? I'm not gonna have 50 cars going up my driveway, and definitely 50 cars aren't gonna go down a private road. The tax base will increase on my property value when the structure's built. It's not gonna affect the tax base of any other house, just like the house that I build will create taxes not only for Breezy Point, but it's gonna increase the tax base. So that's false.
May I?
No, you can speak when I'm finished. Okay? So, you know, to come up here and start throwing opinions and misconceptions is not fair to me by any means. And I think that's what's taking place tonight on certain subjects. And that's not fair. Okay? When you come up here and you speak about I'm building a pole barn with metal, you don't know what I'm doing. You bring up that I'm almost started construction on this site, and I haven't. I just cleared it, which is my right, it's my property. I'm preparing for construction. You come across as though this property actually affects like traffic going into my lot, which it doesn't. And you also represent them a couple feet from the road. I'm over 40 feet from the road, 40 feet. Look, it's right up there. I'm 35 right there. So I'm over 40 feet from the road, from Weavers Point Road. My structure is 40 feet, not a couple feet. So I do hope, and I do understand that you have to get a conditional use permit for this, but I'm a taxpayer. And it's a lot better having a beautified structure up there, not down on the road, as this gentleman referred to as an alley, because there's another garage down by the road. I feel as though up in that area it's private enough. In fact, the people that live along that private drive probably aren't going to see that road. It's the Weavers Point folks, they're going to see a structure there regardless. And it's better to have a structure that matches the house that's representable, because I'm building a nice house down. And as far as that goes, the wetlands aren't even close to this structure. It's up 20 feet probably. I don't know, 15, I'm not sure, but the structure's not going to be an ugly pole building. It's going to match my house. And I'm building a very nice house. So I assure you the taxes will go up. I'm also a developer too, a real estate developer, so I understand how this works. So I just wanted to set the record straight. There are trees on Weavers Point Road. I felt as though you came across it. People are actually coming off Weavers into this. It's going to create traffic up on Weavers Point Road. It's not. You guys got a beautiful, tons of wildlife out there, tons of land, that there's no houses even close to this. So the only thing it might impact for you personally is driving by and seeing a nice building. But that's how it all starts. Weavers Point, it started with all woods, and then someone built. And then when that person built, they probably weren't real happy when someone else had to tear woods down to build. But it's just the evolution of the way things go in life. And the main thing is to create a good tax base to pay for things so the city continues to operate, and that's what I'm doing with a house and a structure. Because if I don't put a structure back there, my house is going to increase the tax base, but that structure is going to increase it even more. So that's all I wanted to say. I do appreciate your time. I'm quite frankly, I'm really surprised on a secondary structure that there's one development that has such opposition when it's not even in their development. And I'm trying to be a good neighbor and, you know, build a nice structure. So it's not a pole barn. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Can I rebut a couple things?
Yes.
I never suggested we were using Apple Lane. We're talking about the road I own, which is Weavers Point. And Mr. Lane is correct. There's a 35-foot rear yard setback to my property line. I would check the measurements of what's staked out there before starting building, just to make sure that that's right, but I think it is 40 feet from the road if it is put in the position that is shown on this map or survey. I disagree completely that the increase in tax value for this particular site compared to the 20 some homes and lakefront property that exists down that road is a balance. So my point was that I think this is injuring the value of the drive into all the rest of that property that is a big part of Breezy Point's tax base. And I think that, I'm glad to hear that the construction methods and materials are gonna match the house. But the fact that you're not putting it down on your own private drive and you're putting it way up on the hill tells me that you don't want to look at it and you don't care that we're going to look at it coming in our driveway. So
I mentioned trailers, right? I can't physically build that in the hill and get a trailer into the garage. That's the only reason I'm not building into the hill. Secondly, you're a real estate person, right? You know the cost of construction to dig into a hill and then go concrete?
yeah, I know it pretty well.
Okay, yeah, it's pretty expensive, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
I do.
So there are reasons why.
Yeah, so I'm glad to hear that it's sided the same as the house. It's got a black, what I saw was black metal, and maybe that was pointing at the roof on your plan. So I may have misinterpreted that. I'm sorry that I did that.
No problem.
Because there's a note on one of the side plans that says black metal.
I'm doing LP siding. It's gonna match up with the siding I'm using on my house.
Okay, all right.
Thank you. Did anyone else want to have some brief comments?
Very brief. Still Tom Lalai, still live the same place. One of the things I think that might be kind of obfuscating the issue here is that this is in the back of the Lanes property. We had a lot of issues a long time ago defining what is the front of the house and what is the back of the house. Houses that are built on the lake, the front of the house faces the lake. So the front of this property faces the lake, the rear of the property is behind the house. This is the rear of the property, and unfortunately, the rear of the property is right on Weavers Point Road. So he's, as far as following our requirements, following your requirements, he's putting the house, or putting the building in the appropriate place. So.
I agree.
Thank you.
Joanne Weaver, 9914 Weavers Point Road. First of all, I'm not sure I owe you an apology, Mr. Lane, but if I used, and I probably did, the descriptor of pole barn, I guess the schematic, it looks like a duck, it walks like a duck, it maybe have different siding on it, but the side of it is, it looks like it's configured like a pole barn would be configured. So my error, and I do agree with what Mr. Smith, Jeff said, relative to balancing out, increase in tax value and decrease on other properties. You have a very difficult job up there trying to balance what we're all trying to tell you is the right thing to do and do the right thing for the city. I appreciate that. But I don't like having things just sort of forced down my throat, so to say, and I do have that sense with you, Mr.
Well, I'm sorry you feel that way. I just was calling you out on, you were saying things that I felt were misleading. So I do apologize if I was direct to you. I was just calling things out that I've heard that I interpreted it, things that weren't accurate, like being a couple feet from the road and just different things that you had mentioned, that's all.
Okay.
So I do apologize if I offended you.
If I may, I think if we can settle the actual square footage of this lot, which you said you would do, right, Jerry?
Well, we will get to the bottom of it.
Okay. I think that's very important, and I think, please drive out and look for yourself on Weavers Point Road at this property. It's, how many trees are there really there? I'm not sure, I had a hard time connecting with the photo that went up there, but if you go out and look, you can see for yourself if they're really trees or if it's really been denuded to a certain extent. It's your judgment. So thank you again, appreciate your time.
Thank you. Well, we're going to go ahead and close the public hearing. I appreciate everybody who spoke. It's always good to have input, to be having clarity, so that we can make the best informed decision here. So I appreciate that everybody had input, and I understand that this is important to everybody that is presenting and wanting their views to be heard. So thank you. Jerry, from an official action at this point, knowing that we do need to proceed with getting a good estimate, or a good, I shouldn't say estimate, but a good acreage back, how would you prefer that we proceed?
I think you need to table the issue until we can get a definitive answer as far as the actual size of the lot. And that will allow us to make the next step, or to, based on that size, the size of the lot will affect the size of the building. I'm sure there's still a height issue that's going to come into play here, but the actual size of the building will be determined by the size of the lot. And I don't think you can take any action other than tabling it until that we get that information. Hopefully we get it by the November meeting.
So I would make a motion that we table this pending additional data to confirm the actual square footage of the lot.
Before we table, could I just ask Yuri, are there 5 lots or 6? Did you check, Yuri, if the discussion was, are there 5 lots there or 6 lots?
There's 6.
There's 6, okay.
There were
Sorry.
6 originally. It got replatted into a different configuration. The first 3 got replatted again into a different configuration, and there were 3 in the original.
Before
So it
we-
is 6 total.
Okay, so before we address that, we do have a motion on the table. Can we complete the motion, and then we can go back to?
I'll second it.
We have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
This is
Motion
1,
has
2,
passed.
3, 4, 5, 6.
We'll get some additional data on that
Yes,
if
it
that
is.
pertains to any decision-making that we need to have going
There were
forward.
6.
Moving on, we do have old business. We have official action about a variance application V 23005 for James and Susan
This is this
Sackrider of 32601 Timberlane Point. I believe that we have a letter here requesting that we extend the,
Yes, Madam Chair. So we got a letter today from Mr. Sackrider, who says he's contracted with Backyard Reflections in Nisswa to design a stormwater runoff plan for 32601 Timberlane Point, which is one of the items that the Planning Commission wanted more clarification on. We haven't completed it yet. He said he would like to waive the 60-day requirement for the Planning Commission to rule on their variance request. So at this time, I'd recommend that the Planning Commission table this item to the November Planning Commission meeting.
So moved.
any discussion here? All right, well, I'll make a motion that we table it for the November Planning and Zoning Commission. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All,
Oh,
oh, go ahead, Jerry.
I think his letter states that he probably isn't going to be ready to have anything to you until May.
May or June, yeah.
Is there an official, do we just keep going each session, or are we allowed to table it past 60
Technically,
days?
state statute says you can go up to 120.
Okay,
So there is a max.
okay. So should,
So I guess my recommendation, I don't know, Jerry, what your thoughts are, would be to table it one more month, give Mr. Sackrider another month, and then at that point, the planning commission will have no choice but to make a decision on the issue. Unless the planning commission just wants to make a, otherwise you have the option to make a recommendation or take action now.
I think if I were Mr. Sackrider, if that were the case, and he's not going to be able to represent himself at a meeting because he's out of state, I think I would make a recommendation that Mr. Sackrider repeat, or rescind his variance application and resubmit it.
And that's why I would just say, I think tabling it, and then he can
He can
rescind it. We can't really rescind it for him. But
I will have that discussion with him, but table it for another 30 days, and then we can, I'll have a discussion with him, I'll get back to you about it.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Oh. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion has passed. All right, any staff reports? Any commissioner reports?
There's 1, 2, 3.
All right,
And then
meeting
this
has been
one.
adjourned. Thank you.
There's 1, 2, 3, and then these 3.